been a nice long morning, and I appreciate you sticking around here. My name is Dean Takahashi. I'm the lead writer for GamesBeat at VentureBeat, and I've been covering games on a daily basis for 27 years, and I've been at VentureBeat for 15 years this week, and I run the I run the GamesBeat Summit events, and our next one's May 22 and 23 in Los Angeles. Hope you can come. And our theme for this town hall is the same as the whole conference, the long game. And you know, the first thing I'd like to do is congratulate our panelists for being part of gaming for the long game already. They've all had long careers, and they're doing a lot more still. So I'd like to thank them for that and for providing the industry with their inspiration. And I have them introduce themselves now. Let's start with Jane.
Thanks, Dean. My name is Jane Pinckard. I'm the Global Portfolio Director for Xbox, and my team looks holistically at all the third-party content, and we do curation, we do scouting, we do, just thinking about what games players would most want to play on our platforms.
All right, and Mike.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Ybarra. I'm the president of Blizzard Entertainment. It's great to be here at D.I.C.E. with everybody and see so many old friends.
I'm Anna Sweet. I'm the CEO of Bad Robot Games, which is a part of the larger Bad Robot Productions group out of LA.
And I'm Careen Yapp. I'm the Chief Strategic Partnerships Officer of Embracer, and I work to develop organic synergies across all of the groups of Embracer.
So I think our mission here is not to solve every problem there is in game development, but to actually just sort of provide some hope and inspiration. So if you're looking for that, then stick around.
We're looking for that, Dean.
Yeah, we've had a very few difficult years in the world, right? The game industry provided a lot of comfort during the pandemic. It's still a struggle. We have the war in Ukraine, we have disasters, and we have geopolitical tension, we have layoffs and a weak economy. The tech industry is bearing the brunt of that weakness. Within gaming, we have toxicity, labor issues, remote work concerns, divisions over blockchain, and just constant change. Why should we be thinking about a theme about the long game at all? Like, we've got a lot of problems to solve right today, right? But I interpret the words "the long game" to mean that there's something on the other side of this, right? And why should we have hope? And my own favorite story to tell about gaming and its impact is about just taking esports into high school, right? And when you see what happens in high school, everybody plays games now, right? And so you have the geeks playing games, the nerds, and the jocks are playing games, right? And they never used to get along. They used to basically bully each other, right? And the nerds actually have a chance in this kind of competition to actually be the best or better. And yet they have some reason for common friendship, really, around games. And if you thought about how you would have turned out if everybody went through high school without seeing bullying or being bullied, that would have changed the world, right? That would have changed us. And so to me, that's something that gaming can do to change society. And to me, it's totally inspirational. I guess my first question then is, what inspires, what does the long game mean to you?
So when I think about the long game, I think for us it's about, can we build a culture that is able to continually embrace growth and change? Because that's what it's going to take to evolve with the changes that you're talking about, Dean. And I think that's, are you okay? Okay. And that's the way that I think it's really the only path I see to staying relevant and building resilience.
Sorry, Mike.
Well, to me, I always view gaming as uniting people together. I think gaming is an awesome media to unite people in the spirit of play. And to your point, Dean, the last 2.5, 3 years have been really challenging for not just the games industry, but I think society in general. And we're all fortunate enough to work in this business that lets us create an escape for people from the world's challenges, the day-to-day stories that we hear. And I think that's an incredible opportunity, but also a big responsibility. And the panel before spoke a lot about creating these incredible worlds and environments that last decades, and that people create lifelong friendships and these epic memories through. And to me, that's incredibly powerful and part of the long game that we're playing.
Anna?
Yeah, I think for me, I completely agree. I think this has been a chaotic and disruptive moment for the world at large. And I think there's sort of two paths through a moment like that. You can kind of put your head down and say, like, I just need to get through it and focus on my day-to-day and survive. And I'm sure we've all done that over the last 3 years. But I think there's also an opportunity to sort of take a step back and say, in all this chaos, what excites me? What makes me happy? Who do I want to be for the next phase of my journey? And so certainly for me, I took this job in March of 2020, which was a very exciting time to take a new job. And so that's exactly how we sort of embraced building Bad Robot Games, is amidst all this chaos and change, who do we want to be and where do we want to work and what are the things we want to create and how do we want to create them? And so I think there can be excitement even amongst the disruption and chaos.
So for me, it's about ensuring that we continue to support game and content creators so that they can deliver amazing experiences. This industry continues to move towards consolidation and subscription, and yes, even streaming, despite recent events. Special shout out to the Stadia community. I love you guys. But that's why it's so important to empower these creators, not only financially with investments, but also finding ways to help them build strategic partnerships so they can continue to grow and expand their businesses. And Embracer's decentralized model is fairly unique to the industry and helps do that.
And Anna, one of the things you've mentioned in our sort of pre-talk is culture, I guess, and how that's important for the long game. You want to get into that some? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think games are incredibly hard to make, and the people who make them are very special. And I think as we think about sort of the long game and the next phase, like, I think we really have to focus on the fact that it's super awesome to work alongside a bunch of essentially magicians who are creating these magical worlds that we all get to enjoy and inhabit and spend time with our friends and family in. And that creativity and that creation only comes from working in an environment where that feels safe and exciting, and there's lots of voices to sort of riff off of new and interesting ideas. And so I think if we're thinking about the long game, the absolutely most important thing to think about is the culture that we're building to enable that creativity to happen. And so for me, that's like the number one thing I think about day to day, is not even the specifics of the thing we're making, but how are the people doing who are making it, and how can we make it a more exciting and safer creative space?
Mike, you want to chime in on that, or on culture?
I think, to Anna's point, culture is sort of foundational. And I think when you have a culture of belonging, a culture of safety, a culture of innovation and risk-taking, and not a culture of fear, you can create an environment where creativity flows. And in our business, design and creativity at Blizzard will always lead us going forward. And our ability to have that mindset across our teams, the boldness and the approach that they have, requires a cultural foundation that we are very committed to and work on every single day. We treat culture just as important as we treat our franchises, Warcraft, Overwatch, Diablo, upcoming ones that we have in development. It is a pillar in who we are and what we do going forward.
Jane?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
I think that's all really great.
By the way, I forgot to mention that if you want to, we don't have microphones in the audience, but if you do want to ask a question, you can tweet at me at Dean Tech, and if I don't drop my phone, I will be able to see it here and ask these questions. So if you really have a burning question, you can get it in that way. we aren't going to be talking about sort of a lot of legality-related questions and super controversial things. I think that we're going to focus on hopefulness, and so if that can direct your questions, then that's the way to go. But for culture, I guess if you don't have a good culture, though, you can definitely lose people, right? And so when we lose talent in this industry, like what's the cause and how do we stop that? That feels like sort of an appropriate question to ask given what's happened in like recent years, right? So how do we retain our talent that's already here? Anna, you want to start?
I mean, I think it has to be a constantly ongoing process. Like I don't think that there's a single answer to that question, and that's very much how we approach it at Bad Robot Games. So when I took this job in 2020, it was a very small company. It was 8 people. There was no real playbook for remote work. I spent a bunch of time thinking about how many days am I going to be in the office, because I was going to commute down from Northern California to Southern, and then I never ended up going, right? We just, on the fly, had to sort of build this company with no sort of roadmap on how to really do that. And so what we've done is really build in a couple key components from the very beginning. So in the last 3 years, we've gone from 8 people to 55 people. Having a diverse team is like our #1 most important strategy. So we've built that in at every layer of our recruiting, of our onboarding, of how we work together as teams. So we're very proud that we're 50% women and we're 50% non-white. That is very core to who we are as a company. But it's not easy, and we don't get it right every day. And so for us, it's become just this series of experiments. We literally treat them as experiments. So we decided, let's try the 4-day work week. We got some pushback, actually, from the team. They were like, some members of our team wanted to spend Friday checking things off their to-do list. That was what gave them comfort going into the weekend, knowing stuff was done. So we took the 4-day work week and we turned it into what we now call Free Fridays, which is you can work on Fridays, but you can't talk to anyone else because someone else might not be working. So for us, it's just been this constant iteration of, we don't know the path forward. We don't know, there's no playbook for this, but every day we sort of look at the team and we say, how is our culture right now? What's breaking? What's working? How can we double down on that? How can we change this? What new thing can we try and learn from? And we've just gotten very comfortable with saying, hey, we tried that for 3 months and it totally sucked. We should stop doing that. And then we try a new experiment. And so I think that's sort of the most important thing, is building in this sort of North Star of we want a diverse team and a healthy culture, and then finding our path to that and actively just being okay trying and failing.
Speaking of experiments, I think I remember you saying that you never really made opportunistic hires, right? And that one of the reasons is you could build a pipeline or you could build a pool of people and actually wind up having a lot more diverse set of candidates that way, right?
Yeah, so one of our hiring rules is we don't make a hire until we've looked at a pipeline of candidates that is 50% women and 50% non-white. So that means it's not that we don't take referrals. We do. We have amazing people that work on our team, and they refer amazing people. What we do is we say, okay, let's put that person through the interview loops. While we're doing that, let's go out and source and find a diverse pipeline. And I would say half the time we end up hiring the amazing referral, and half the time we end up hiring someone we would have never met if we hadn't have put in that effort. And so for us, it's just been sort of this core tenet of how we hire, because we're just seeing amazing results in terms of expanding our network, finding new amazing voices, and then adding them to our team and our culture.
Anybody else want to chime in here?
I want to say something about, in my position, I'm able to visit a lot of studios around the world, and we're just starting to kind of get back into the swing of that. And something I've noticed is that healthy teams can look like, they're very different. And I think there is no one size fits all. And so as you're sort of thinking about building your team and your culture, I think Anna's suggestion of trying what works for you is such a great one, because I see teams that are like 90% in the office. I see teams that are also have been distributed since before the strange times, because that's just the way they set things up initially. I think don't feel pressured to copy another culture or see something that works for some other team, because I think it is really going to depend on the kind of games you're making and the kind of teams that you have.
Careen's answer is just buy another company, right? You just hire.
Yes, and
Yeah.
don't mess with their culture. Like, support them, allow them to have the autonomy, and don't change their culture. Don't make them become centralized, and allow them to continue doing what they do best.
Yeah, that's actually something I'll just chime on. I think, there's 4,500 or so people at Blizzard right now, and culture isn't top down. There are hundreds of subcultures within organizations of that size. And I think one of the key learnings that I've had is how do you foster those different cultures? Because you can't say our culture is X, Y, Z, and everyone in a team of scale abides to that, because you need different, to Jane's point, teams have different strengths and they approach things differently. And so, a lot of people think of culture as, okay, it's this and we're all this, but I find that when you give teams the flexibility to establish their own cultures across, in our case, Warcraft, Overwatch, Diablo, incredibly different cultures in there that you nurture and foster and do a lot of listening to and applying. It's a balance of really three things: the team's feedback, the players that you're listening to, and the business that you're operating. And it's kind of that triangle as you make decisions going forward.
So there's always this signal or noise question. Mike, what are the most important issues or changes going on in gaming right now, given there's always chaos?
Well, I would say there is always disruption in gaming, and I actually welcome that. If you think about it, we're, 30, 35 years? We're a pretty young business in this type of entertainment. And so for us, that disruption is opportunity, and I think we look at it all the time. You can look back in the last 3 years and say, wow, there's been a lot of challenges that people and society has gone through, and different ways that companies have approached that. To me, when I look forward, I see incredible growth in gaming. It wasn't just 10 years ago that gaming was hundreds of millions. Now we're talking about billions of people engaging in gaming. It's no longer, to your intro, stereotypes of people playing. Everybody is playing one way or another. And that's an opportunity for all of us and our teams to think about the creative approach we have for these audience and really deliver incredible moments and friendships and memories for people together. So to me, I'm far more optimistic about where this industry is going and the impact everyone can have, from small to large companies, than I am looking at sort of the challenges that exist. We have to address those challenges and embrace them and change and be agile in our approaches. But I think the opportunity is great. I often remind the teams, we make games. Like, we put smiles on hundreds of millions of faces, and there's nothing more impactful or meaningful for me or the people at Blizzard than doing that.
Anybody else want to join?
My personal interest and an issue that I would like to see solved is solving discoverability. If you see the way other entertainment is consumed, they have these powerful algorithms that send you down the rabbit hole of TikTok, and you get more and more of what you want delivered to you. And so how do we, as we have these big game stores and these larger subscriptions coming along, how do we help solve discoverability? How do platforms take a look at these tools, and do they use them, or do they repurpose them, or do they build their own to make it easier to serve more game content that gamers want directly to the gamers? Because it's an issue. It's an issue for indies. It's an issue for mobile. I would love to see that solved. I would love for any player to come across any game and instantly be able to try it and play it, buy it on whatever platform they want in any territory that they are. That, to me, would be the perfect ideal future for me.
That makes me think of a question: do we have too many games?
Oh no, games are amazing. Like, there are so many talented content creators and game creators out there building these experiences that are very unique, that are going to appeal to someone, right? One of the things that I think is the most unique about Embracer is that we have games for every gamer on every platform, from mobile all the way through to board games, from hyper casual all the way through to core. And so I don't think there's too many games. I think there's something out there for everyone.
The rest of you guys, what do you think?
I mean, there are 9 billion people on the planet. I think Yeah, I think, but to Careen's point, I think it's right. It's about reaching the players and helping people discover their next favorite game, which is really challenging. It is really hard. I definitely agree with that. I also think it's related to another issue that we've been thinking a lot about internally at Xbox, which is around accessibility. And what I love about accessibility is that it's such a broad and powerful term that can have an enormous impact if you're sort of paying attention to it. Because it means not just offering like a colorblind option for colorblind players, but it also means things like a story mode for someone like me whose reflexes are maybe not as fast as they used to be, but I still want to play the game and not have to, spend 10 hours kind of, perfecting my technique on something. So accessibility can mean a lot of different things. It also means sort of, what are the sort of platforms where players can play? How accessible are they? What regions do we have? Can we localize in as many languages as we can? Things like that all fall under that umbrella, and I think that is part of the discoverability question too that you're talking about.
I mean, as we aspire to reach 9 billion people, part of it is just a responsibility we have as an industry to make sure our games are safe for people of all ages. Whether you think about the text they send, the voice conversations they have, having the right tools and capabilities in that is something that I think, as an industry, I think we all would say we can do better here in order to invite more of those 9 billion people into the games in scenarios where the parents or the children are safe and they feel like they belong and they're having incredible positive impacts on their life.
I mean, I would go back to the point I made earlier about building diverse teams. I think one of the reasons why that is a top-line strategy for us is I think we already have a lot of those voices in the games industry. It's not really about reaching them. We saw this before the pandemic with, lots and lots of young women playing Fortnite. And then certainly during the pandemic, a lot of people were bored in their houses and discovered that games are wonderful, and they've come in. And now we have to make content that keeps them coming back. And I think the only way you can do that is if you have a bunch of diverse voices contributing to how the games are played, what are the characters in the world, what are the stories they tell. And so I think it's extremely important in building a long-term, huge business in having those voices on the teams creating that content.
Yeah, absolutely. And from a platform perspective, it's about supporting those partners and those creators who are making those kinds of games. Yeah, for sure.
If you're a developer and you're trying to figure out how much should I budget for something like accessibility, what is the answer to that? How do you think about that?
I'm not really the right person to answer. They don't let me touch the budget.
Who's in charge of budgets here?
I don't know if you think about it in terms of the budget. I think, we at Blizzard, we have basically every team in a central organization has someone thinking about the DE&I approach and the accessibility approach and the design approach in our games. And so to me, it's not let's put apart X funds to do Y. It has to be in the DNA of the team. You need every single person thinking about, is the feature or component I'm making accessible and made for the broadest possible audience? And I think that's the approach that we found at least successful.
I would recommend that developers and publishers reach out to their platforms and ask them, what do you support in terms of accessibility? There are accessibility tags, there are different things that they're doing that they can give you guidance on what to include.
So Supercell recently announced that they made $1.9 billion in revenue in 2022. And they made that from 5 games that they've published over the last decade or so. They also said that they've killed 30 games that were in at least prototype form in mid-development. And Ilkka Pananen, the CEO of Supercell, said their ambition is to make great games that as many people as possible can play and could be remembered forever. First, do you have any sort of thought about Supercell's process there, but also, or that kind of approach maybe to making great games? And if you could do something that could be remembered forever, what would it be? And I'll throw this at Mike first because it sounds very Blizzard-like to actually be so brutal to kill your own games like that. Yeah.
Well, I don't think teams should be afraid to say, if they found the magic in the design and the game loop of a thought. Innovation has to be part of the DNA in gaming, or I think it will start slowing. And so we certainly encourage teams to be bold. They have to do that around a safety, around their role at the company, and that they're comfortable in doing it. But we certainly want innovation. And so in some ways I agree. We will always have incubation teams. We'll always be thinking about within our franchises, what is the next thing we can do, or how can we improve the games we have and think about the next games for the next 20 years. I always say, when someone asks me, what are you trying to do at Blizzard at a foundational level? Like what's the connection you bring? And if we can bring people together to create lifelong friendships through these games, I think that's incredibly powerful, because it addresses a lot of design challenges when you approach making a game. But to me, Blizzard will be bold. We'll try to find the next big genres, the next big games that we want to be making, and we'll be smart and responsible as we approach that.
Anna?
I certainly hope that companies like Blizzard and Supercell optimize for that, because I think we do want big, amazing worlds that we get to live in and explore. Certainly, as a part of Bad Robot, we have access to some of the most incredible IP that I just can't wait to build a game in, right? And those are worlds that millions and millions and millions of people love. I guess I would say, though, that I hope that not all of us optimize for that. Like, one of my most favorite gaming experiences in the last year or two was playing Unpacking with a friend. It was 4 hours on the couch telling ourselves hilarious stories about who was moving into these rooms and these apartments. And I think that game would never get made in a world where we were optimizing for that, sort of for the big dream and the most people playing a particular game. But there was so much joy for me and my friend in that moment that it was so worth it. And so I think we have to, I think it comes back to making games for lots of different kinds of gamers. We have to have space for both of those things, because that is where a lot of the love and the creativity and the art live.
And how do you get to something that's remembered forever? Anybody?
I think that we're fortunate enough to have some of those. When you think about 18 years of World of Warcraft, from Leroy Jenkins getting on Jeopardy and all over, like, those are memories that will last, I think, forever in gaming industry. And I think they organically happen. You're not designing for that to happen. And so part of it is just the incredible community. Holly talked a lot about how over time, when you create a game, sure, you're making it, but the community owns it. And I think they organically create these memories that people will remember for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's sort of how I think of it too, because our work on my team is so behind the scenes. So the idea that someone's going to remember, something that we did in the curation process, it seems like that's not really what what drives us and what we do. But to your point about, that or unpacking, if we can sort of select a game that changes someone's life, right, then it's like, then we've done a job. We've done a good job. If someone can play a game and it somehow changes their life in a big way or a small way. So maybe that's a good thing to strive for.
I do wonder how you inspire developers in that, say, environment that is, say, optimized the way Supercell does. Like, you tell developers, only 5 out of 35 games you guys are going to make are going to hit the market, right? How do you make them happy in that kind of world? It seems very tough. There's like some of these contradictions of like, we want the culture to be right for game developers, but at the same time, we have this relentless focus on quality.
I would think part of that is about being transparent when you're bringing someone on board about what is your culture, whether it's that culture or it's we optimize for smaller games that are much more creative and experimental, like whatever your culture is, I think it's really important to be transparent in your interview process of, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, so that when people come in, they're not surprised by things like that. I think that's the worst possible outcome, right? Is you've come into Supercell and you have no idea that that's how they think about shipping games. Like, that would be terrible. And so I think that's really on us as leaders and hiring managers to make sure that people know who we are and what it's like to be a part of our culture.
So on the flip side of Supercell, I think we're about to get a ton of games from the combination of user-generated content and generative AI. In fact, on Friday, Roblox showed this working in different demos that they did with racing cars, and like how you could just sort of, just like that, change something about the car. And it leads me back to that wonder of like, how many games is too many? We're about to get 10x more games thanks to user-generated content, right? I don't know that anybody really wanted to answer this question, but I'd leave it hanging there. Like, I don't know what is going to happen when we get all these games. Anyway, we don't have to answer every question, I think. But
I've been on the job 4 weeks. Give me a break.
So I guess I would say I think there are positives and negatives to it. I think it comes down to a lot about the curation. Like, how do you sort through all the things to find not just the good things, but the things that are good to that particular gamer. So I think that's a challenge. I think one of the positives, though, is I think there's a lot of access and accessibility to sort of new ideas and I worked at Valve for a very long time. It is kind of the home of UGC and modding and so much of the content, in the Team Fortress 2 hat era or in Counter-Strike, a lot of that is built by the community, and there's so many amazing, innovative ideas that the game teams themselves would maybe never have thought of, but the community member who was passionate about it had the skills and the access to create something amazing and then share it with the larger gaming community. So I think it's about balancing those two things. How do you bring in new ideas, community passion and love, but then make it accessible to finding the good stuff?
You just reminded me, one of my favorite games when I was a little kid was Lode Runner on the Commodore 64, which is a hint of how old I am. But I love that game, and it came with a level editor, which I used with my sister to challenge each other with these impossible levels where you would die immediately. But I was thinking, with sort of generated content and AI-assisted content, I could see a scenario where making the game is the game, right? And that could be a super exciting and different way to incorporate these tools. I think ultimately, though, to me, games are art, and there's always going to be a human involved in there somewhere, I think, I believe. So it's sort of about how we sort of use these new tools and experiment with them, which is interesting.
I just know that I've seen some interesting stories come in the last month that are related to UGC and generative AI. And one of them is from Electric Noir, and they are doing horror games and basically creating a horror platform. And they're letting the users generate different horror game scenarios. And they expected generative AI just to help them more with sort of fleshing it out and even giving it some kind of graphics and providing that sort of directly to users. And another one that was interesting was LG has on their latest TVs an app called Orbit, and a company called Oxman is creating Ox World, where you type in a prompt and it generates a multiplayer game based on that prompt, and you can start playing it on your TV right away. So it's crazy stuff, but it's,
But is it fun?
I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. That's
It's
the key, right?
Yeah.
Is it fun?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so we're in a very interesting world. It feels like generative AI and UGC and the combination of that is probably going to overtake blockchain in terms of all the hot startups, I guess, right? But I mean, speaking of lots and lots of content, I'm curious about the metaverse. Anna, you seem to be the one with the most interest in the metaverse. Science fiction fan, right? And what do you see in it?
Well, it's definitely not a games industry panel if we don't talk about the metaverse. I think the interesting thing about the metaverse right now is that I bet if we passed the mic around and everyone explained what their idea of the metaverse was, it would all be different, which I think is really cool. Like, it's this big sort of North Star that I think a lot of people think is coming, and the games industry is going to lead the way, and it's very exciting. I think the thing I'm most nervous about is there's so many pieces that have to come together in order for that sort of big dream North Star, whatever your version of it might be, to happen, that I worry that a lot of people right now sort of have decided, like, this is the path from here to there. This is how you build the metaverse. And I think that is maybe the fastest way to never get to the metaverse. I think from my perspective, it's going to take so much innovation, so much creativity. We are all going to try a bunch of little things, fail, learn from it, and then keep building on it. And so I think it's a very long-term dream. I think it's very exciting, and I think we kind of just have to enjoy the journey as opposed to saying, like, I've solved it and this is how we're going to do it. I don't think that will get us there.
I think what's interesting is that I do believe the game industry is going to lead the way to the metaverse, right? And I interviewed Jason Rubin from Meta, and he explained that, like, the metaverse is going to be all this 3D content. The way you do that is through a game engine, and the people who know how to use game engines are game developers. And so, therefore, it's clear that game developers have the chance to lead the way to the metaverse, right? But I don't think they have to do it all themselves as well. Like, I think in March I'm going to moderate like the 4th session at NVIDIA's GTC event about the metaverse, right? And they are backing the Omniverse and all the GPUs and supercomputers. They hope to be used for the metaverse, and it's across all industries that they're targeting this. And so they expect to create a weather simulation of the entire Earth, a digital twin of the Earth. Get all the GPUs and supercomputers of the world to work on this problem so that they could predict climate change for years to come. And to do that, they need a meter-level accuracy to the simulation of the world. And they have to basically build the entire world. Well, once they're done with that, Jensen Huang said to me, the CEO of NVIDIA, he said, once we've done that, you get the metaverse for free, right? Basically, the realistic Earth metaverse would be built this way. And then you just share it out to all the game developers. They don't have to build it all themselves, which I think is an interesting path, I guess, to getting there. Anyway, I guess I'm not supposed to be a panelist, but sorry about that.
But you're doing a great job. This is amazing.
Anyway, I hope that triggered a thought for somebody else. My long monologue was a digression, or do you guys have a thought about this?
I mean, in a way, and maybe it's because I don't really understand what the metaverse is, but I feel like I have been in metaverses because I've played World of Warcraft, for example. I have made friends in Stormwind. I have done things that had real impact in my life. So in some ways, I feel like metaverse has already been here. Is that correct? I don't know. I'm just sort of testing out this idea.
No, I mean, I would agree with that. I think right now a lot of the conversation around the metaverse is very focused on, like, who owns the doors? Like, what avatar are we going to use? How are we going to sign in? Like, how are we going to get there? And I think those things are important, but I think in the long term they don't ultimately matter. Like, when I think about Ready Player One, the thing that resonated with me the most in that version of the metaverse was, like, the pure, utter joy of exploring a universe that you have loved your whole life, and now you're in it, and you're, like, a part of it, which is one of the things that drew me to joining Bad Robot, is we get to be a part of this larger content creation engine. And so, I mentioned earlier that we have lots of IP from Bad Robot that we can build worlds in, but we're actually not doing that for our first game. We actually made the conscious choice of saying, what if we built a world together? Like, what if we sat down with our amazing colleagues in film and television, and we have a music label, and we have a live theater department, and like, what if we built a universe that all of us were authentically excited to tell a story in? And that's where we're setting our game. And from my perspective, that is a very interesting path to the metaverse, because I think the real question about the metaverse is, what are we all going to do there? And I think it takes content creators and storytellers and game designers to sort of figure that out. And I think that's actually the really exciting question.
Yeah, I think at Blizzard, I've never been in a meeting or heard of a meeting where people sit down and say the word metaverse and what that means. But we do sit down every day and talk about creating worlds that billions of people want to be part of. And Jane, I think this hits to what you're saying. And if that turns into the metaverse or whatever that becomes, great. But the dialogue, to Anna's point, of identity and all of these things that many companies are jostling against, to me, that's not where the energy needs to be. It needs to be on providing the consumer with something they look at and say, wow, I want to be part of that. How do I, that's really interesting to me. And the technology today and some of the things we see out there is probably the biggest barrier to actually reaching that.
Off on a tangent again. Oddly enough, what this talk about building worlds makes me think of is Super Nintendo World at Universal Studios Hollywood. And I went to it, and I was also watching some streamers talk about it, about going to that and being in that experience. And they said, like, it's like, I can't believe it. I'm like in a video game, right? And you know, they're bumping little blocks and, you know, getting nice little rewards for it. But yeah, it's funny how worlds sort of are the thing that inspire people so much, really. And Anna, you know, you haven't mentioned what your boss's name is yet, right? But how do you feel about the games and Hollywood successes we've seen lately, and what does that have to do with your boss as well?
Yes, I'm very lucky to get to work very closely with J.J. Abrams, and not just him. Honestly, the whole Bad Robot team is just an insane amount of talented, creative storytellers. I think that the really exciting thing about where we are right now with sort of cross-medium worlds and storytelling is, I think we've all stopped considering it marketing. Like, it used to be the case that there was a hit movie and you'd be like, great, someone make a game, just slap that IP on it, or the other way around. And I think now the things that we're seeing that are really breaking through, like The Last of Us, I mean, those things are being treated as authentic, real parts of that world. And I think that's super exciting for gamers, because we all know games take a really long time to make. If I've played a game and I love that world, like, I can now explore new stories, new characters on the show. And then as game designers, we can look at that and say, like, oh, that character unexpectedly really resonated with people. I should pull that into the next major update on the game, right? Over time, these things can start to feed into each other in a way that creates just an infinitely explorable world and story that you get to sometimes be a part of, sometimes watch other characters' stories be told. And if it's a real living thing, I think that's just very exciting for gamers. I mean, you guys are working on this too, I think. I hope.
Yes. So with our recent acquisitions and our recent announcements, I think it just shows that Embracer's in it for the long run. So being able to continue carrying, it's an honor to continue to carry on the heritage of Lord of the Rings. It's amazing to be able to continue to build upon the legacy of Lara Croft. But I am not the president of Middle-earth Enterprises, and I'm not the president of Crystal Dynamics, so I can't share with you probably some amazing visionary ideas that they have for those franchises. But I can tell you the thing that resonates with me is the phrase "content is king" is just that does not resonate more than it is so. I guess it resonates the most these days than any other days with with an insatiable demand for content, with the number of entertainment platforms, with the strength of the video games industry. We are in a very unique opportunity. It's just amazing what's happening.
Yeah, I think Embracer's done lots of deals. Like, how many studios are there? Not sure right now.
I don't know.
But, 119 was where I lost count, right?
There,
But,
you're probably right. I'd have to go look it up.
but like doubling down is like an interesting idea, right? In the game industry, like, you know, you can't do everything. You got to let go of something, and you might as well double down on what works. And to me, those two deals of the Tolkien license and Lara Croft and all that represent to me like a step up for Embracer in doubling down on something, right? Is that true?
I think focusing on those franchises is very important. I mean, everybody wants to have their big AAA experience, but I also think the thing that is most unique about Embracer is that we have such a large and varied portfolio. And so, as I said before, we reach every gamer on every platform. So when you have hundreds of games in development, like we do, that target a lot of different genres, a lot of different consumers, it helps to mitigate some of the standard industry risk that's out there. So if one of our games maybe stumbles a little bit, I mean, it's really disappointing, but it's less impactful because we have such a broad portfolio. So yes, I absolutely love Lord of the Rings, and I love Tomb Raider, but I also love Easy Brain's mobile content that is doing very well, and Asmodee's board game business that is doing very well for us. So I think it's worth, you know, having something for everyone.
So for the rest of you, what does doubling down mean?
Well, I think to us, you know, someone mentioned focus and how important that is. And you know, at the end of the day, we make incredible worlds and games. And so at Blizzard, we're very focused on that. Now, that doesn't take away from what we see in the industry. We see some amazing transmedia taking these worlds people have created and bringing them to TV and to movies. And I think we just have to be clear on what is the goal in doing that and making sure that you have that focus going forward. But for us, the gaming space is just enormous. Like, we're so, like, the people in this room, some of you are the next generation of what's going to you know, create these incredible connections and memories for people. That, to us, is the primary focus of what Blizzard does. It doesn't say we'll never look at beyond gaming and what that forum can be like. We have some great talent. You heard from several of them this morning on taking our games beyond just games themselves. But doubling down is, let's create these amazing games that people want to spend time in and build connections with.
Yeah, and I think for us on the platform side, that sort of translates into centering player experiences and creator experiences, and constantly sort of asking ourselves, you know, how would our players and creators want to engage with what we can offer? What kinds of experiences are they looking for? What kind of games do they want to play? What kind of games do they want to publish? Can we find the players, you know, can we match make between the players and the creators? And I think as long as we sort of focus on that and double down on that, then any other strategic move that we need to make is going to be suggested by that core focus. And we'll be able to, you know, do the right thing by our players and partners.
We got some audience questions here. Min Kim, there's a lot of consolidation happening right now. Game teams are getting larger. There are also more teams than ever founding new studios funded by VCs and strategics. Is there enough talent to make all the games we dream of making? How does this impact your company? Can you find talent? It almost feels like this is a 2-month-old question, though, right? Because you know, we are seeing teams start to shrink now, and you know, projects get canceled, right? And so, in some sense, it may be correcting itself. But is there still some talent shortage out there that you guys see?
I mean, I think there is. I mean, I think this moment in time is maybe a bit of a market correction. I don't know. It's a strange moment in time. But I think if we're going back to the long game and taking the long view, I think no, we do not have enough talent to build all the worlds and stories that we want. And I would go back to what we started sort of this conversation with, which is, in particular, we do not have enough diverse and different voices doing that work and being that talent. And so if I was going to focus, you know, very long term on one thing around our talent pipelines. I think we have a lot of work to do to continue to get more people, and specifically more types of people, excited about working in the games industry so that we can make all the games and tell all the stories that we want to tell.
And Careen, like, what do you suggest to students who want to make a career in games?
So I was about to say, to that former question, that the work that I do, the volunteer work that I do, I see a lot of, I see a lot of industry organizations giving out scholarships. I see a lot of schools trying to develop programs for video game development. I would recommend for students who are interested in studying video games and wanting to get into the industry that they look into industry organizations. There's the UK Interactive Entertainment Association, there's BAFTA, there's Women in Games Europe, WIGJ, there's Women in Games International in the US, there's the ESA Foundation, there's the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. These guys have scholars here today actually going through a program. All of these organizations offer either student memberships or scholarships or programs where you can have mentorships. You can go into a mentorship program with Women in Games International and be paired with an industry veteran and go through negotiation classes. And we had a program. Women in Games International had a program called Get in the Game. They have it. They have students here, or not students. They have people here today. They sent Google Scholars to Paris Games Week last year. These women went through an entire week of, touring the Xbox booth, going to a games development studio and touring the game development studio, touring a Google office, having a recruiter from Microsoft talk to them about building your resume and your LinkedIn profile. They had the Stadia community manager talk about building your online social media presence and what does that mean. And at the end of the week, the women were just so excited about the potential. There was somebody who made a comment. She said, this week has meant so much to me because 3 years ago I left the Ukraine as a refugee, and now I'm an intern at Coffee Stain Studios, and I think sometimes that the ideas that I have of what I want to accomplish in the industry are crazy. She's like, but after this week, I know I can do it. I know that this is possible. And so I would encourage any student, anybody who's interested in getting into the industry, to take advantage of these programs because it helps you build your network before you even start your job.
I don't think we'll ever have enough talent to drive the innovation in gaming. For us, even at Blizzard, we have a program where we bring people in and they might not have all of the skill set, but we commit to them through a curriculum to build that skill set, and then we place them into the roles. I think all of us in the industry, if we have the means to be able to do that, owe it to the industry and to the types of games we're trying to make, to Anna's point on just the diversity and the opportunity people have or don't have just because of where they're at or where they're located. And that's something we're firmly committed to. But there's so many games out there, and the talent and capability is really, we're creating the world's best entertainment. And it takes a skill set and our ability to help actually bring people in and give them that skill set and that opportunity is something that is important to us.
I squeeze in one more from Mark DeLora here. What do you think of the kids market? For the most part, the game industry is teen plus, and the kids market is ceded to Nintendo and free games on mobile devices. How do we offer more for this huge potential market?
Oh, Mark, that's such a great question. I do want to say Paw Patrol did amazing numbers. So did Disney Dreamlight Valley. So I think there are games that can actually appeal to both, right? Like obviously Disney Dreamlight Valley is very kid-friendly. Hang out with your favorite Disney characters, but also I played the game, and I'm very I played the game pretty obsessively. So I think, but yes, I agree. I would love to see even more experiences like that can be for children, but are also sort of rich and beautiful enough for people like me, maybe who want to, explore in those worlds. Yeah, what was the rest of his question?
Just what more can we do to really supercharge the huge potential market for kids?
I think, I mean, for us, it comes down to supporting the creators that are making those games and making sure that they are, they have tools, they have, will help them figure out how they want to build their games and bring them to the platform. But I think going back to Careen's point about discoverability, it's also about making sure that kids and parents have the ability to find those games, because that's the other piece of it.
All right, 1 minute each. What can you say to inspire our audience? Let's start with Careen.
I would encourage everybody to get out and volunteer with the next generation of video game industry colleagues, because they are what inspire me.
I would go back to a point I made earlier about how we've been, recruiting for our team. I would say take this opportunity and any opportunity you can to meet somebody you don't already know in the games industry. I think this is in some ways a very small industry, and I think we all have our relationships and our friendships that we built over many, many years. But there's a lot of really amazing talent out there that you don't know, and so I would take the opportunity whenever you can to meet them.
I would just say strive for inclusive design. We talk about 9 billion people on the planet, and it's on all of us to make sure we're designing the games in a way to reach all of them and let those connections happen.
I agree with what everyone has said, and I will add one thing, which is play a game that is a little outside of your comfort zone and your taste. Just experiment and explore.
And I would say moderate panels with lots of smart people on it, and try not to drop your laptop more than once.
Thank you, Dean.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.